On this episode of the John1911 Podcast, an update on the Range Project, the worst trade Freeze ever made, and should we buy a 10mm Ruger pistol?
Okay, good morning everybody, this is Marky and Freeze, and this is episode 100 of the John1911 Podcast. How's it going, Freeze?
It's going great. Freaking-tastic.
You know, we would have thought that, oh yeah, episode 100, we should do something special. Instead, you know, I'm in my truck in a parking lot of a hardware store, drinking coffee. You've been up all night, and, you know, we're so busy trying to get stuff done today. We just don't have time to do anything special. So, hey, congratulations on 100 podcasts, brother.
Hey, congratulations. You know what you get for the 100th podcast? You get to listen to us talk crap. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Speaking of talking crap, because we talked for about 2 minutes before we started recording, and I told you to save it because I wanted to. So I mentioned to Freeze, I was like, did you hear about Glen Beck, of all people, accusing the media of being anti-Trump or Trump derangement syndrome and storming off the air from some, in some interview?
Glen Beck is like herpes. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Dude, that dude is amazing. He spent 2 years hating on the guy. And when he has to sell his private fucking jet, now all of a sudden he's pro-Trump.
God, I mean, it is just, if it isn't a good example of how modern social media smokes out people's bullshit, I don't even know where to begin. So if people that may not be aware of this, Glen Beck, you know, I'm not going to go into all of it, but, you know, Glen Beck, he is who he is. He started his own media company called The Blaze, and then he's got his radio show, and he's got The Blaze TV and all this. And long story short is, once he went anti-Trump, most of his base left him because he got super religious.
He's like, oh, I got to vote my conscience. You know, Trump's going to be bad for the country. Wrong. You know, he's like, I can't vote for Trump. And even after Trump got the nomination, he's still basically not that he didn't go as far as to say he would vote for Hillary, but he almost insinuated it. And like, I can't vote for Trump, and he did everything within his media power to get people not to vote for Trump. And even after Trump was elected president, he still hated on Trump. And as in the 2-year downward spiral of him hating on Trump, he kept losing people and losing people and losing people, which means he had to lay off people because his business was going into the garbage because basically his base were pro-Trump people.
And I think what hurt him a lot with his base was the argument. I mean, in fairness, like, look, you and I liked Glen Beck because we liked historian Glen Beck, but Glen Beck has kind of become more like the evangelical preacher Glen Beck, which is fine. He can do what he wants. But what happened was he made the mistake a lot of fundamentalists make. And it happens in Catholicism, and it happens in Islam, and then it's happened with Glen Beck. What he did is he told all these people who were supporting Trump but were evangelicals, and listen to Beck, he told them that I'm holier than you. He did the whole I'm holier than thou argument. How dare you vote for this man? How dare you have a different opinion of me? And we're both Christians. I'm holier than thou. And that, and in short, that's what he's done. And he literally he might as well taken a big old ISIS knife and chopped his own goddamn head off.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, now that he's laid off like 95% of his staff, he's down to like literally. I think he's down to literally like 30 or 40 employees, if that many.
I've heard it's under 40.
Yeah, okay. He's got to sell his house in Dallas. He's moving to LA. His house is
for sale. The rumor is his airplane's for sale. His house is for sale.
Yes. And And now that he's basically scraping the bottom of the Glen Beck sludge pit, he now wears a "Make America Great Again" hat, and he talks about how awesome he always talks about how awesome Glen Beck is, but he's now talking about how awesome Donald Trump is, and it's like, dude.
Yeah. He did it a couple of weeks ago. He put on the hat, this "Make America Great Again" hat, and it's like, and then, what he tells his listeners is, he goes, I'm putting my house up for sale because everything's overheated and there's another crash coming, and so I'm getting ready. So, I mean, again, there's always a correction, or there's always a correction in the market, which is 10%, about every 3 to 5 years, and there's normally a recession every 7 to 10 or 8 to 10. So, okay. So here's the thing. All of this is predictable. It's called the business cycle. But Glen Beck is, again, he just can't admit that he's going in a different track or that he's made mistakes. He's got to make it like it's the end of the goddamn world and it's the end of days and he's getting ready. And it's like, shut the fuck up.
No, the bottom line is Glen Beck can't admit to his people that Glen Beck was wrong. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, so
he was wrong, and he can't admit it.
Let's put a bow on this. So we brought everybody up to speed on that. So here's what happened. Glen Beck decided to do an interview. I think it was I can see the guy's face. I can't remember. Okay, so here's who Brian Stetzler is. He works at CNN. He's their media guy, and he reports on the goings on in media. And so he arranges an interview with Glen Beck to show up on CNN. And I think Beck used to work for CNN. And so they're doing their interview, and Stetzler asks Beck about a news report that talked about a new round of layoffs at the Blaze, and quote, the news report had said that the Blaze is imploding. And Glen Beck apparently did not want to talk about this. So what he did is, instead of giving a double-speak, two-faced answer, he decided to have a hissy fit, accuse Brian Stetzler of having Trump derangement syndrome, takes the microphone off and walks out of the interview, walks off the shot. And, it's just like, talk about goddamn delusional. And I mean it that way. Goddamn delusional Glen Beck.
Yeah, exactly.
Just Glen Beck is just, I really liked him. And in some way, I will admit, I still do like him in some way.
Look,
but you can tell he's a little full of himself.
Look, I like Glen Beck. I've seen Glen Beck hell, as a matter of fact, if you remember, I think we were in Louisville at the NRA show. Glen Beck was one of the speakers there. We were leaving the convention center, and I bumped into one of his security guards when they were ushering him out the side door.
You know what? I think I do remember that.
Yeah. There was a limo parked out there. He was coming out the side door when there was 4 of us leaving the convention center. And I bumped into a security guard because they rushed him out through the crowd. But look, I like Glen Beck, the historian, because Glen Beck is a very, very smart man. He knows his shit. But when Glen Beck starts mixing history and politics with religion, that's the Glen Beck I despise and detest.
Yep, he goes into that whole holier than thou argument, and it's just
Yeah, it's crazy. But if he would knock the religious holier than thou bullshit out of it, he's well worth listening to.
Again, it's all these evangelicals are supporting Trump. Now, we've never talked. I don't think you and I have ever talked about this, but we have some people that work in the office that are I would call them religious, and they know some people that are very, very, very religious. They're at the extreme end of the spectrum, not crazy like drinking the Kool-Aid religious, but there are people out there. There are a lot of, I would call, very conservative religious people who have absolutely nothing in common with a billionaire New York foul-mouthed brash playboy who literally think that Donald Trump is doing the Lord's work because he's straight up fighting evil of, like they see some of the stuff that's going on in the Democratic Party is straight up like this, the mark of the devil stuff, and they support Trump. And if Beck is surprised that he's able to get between somebody like that and Trump and do the holier than thou argument, and the wheels are falling off his business. I mean, it's not a shock.
Yeah, no.
I mean, look, people that followed us back when we were Tactical T-shirts, I remember you were talking about Trump, and I remember just being like, okay. I mean, I'm like, Trump?
Hey, I was on this Trump train, and I hate to use the term Trump train.
You were.
I was on it long before you were, and I told you, I said,
God.
He's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is
you
the guy.
You like Cruz and you like Trump. Huh?
You're like, I don't know. Now, and look, don't get me wrong. I don't dislike Ted Cruz. But, Ted Cruz at the end of the day is just another Republican politician.
He is.
He
is. Ted Cruz's problem was he's a very smart man, and he's an educated man. He's trained as an attorney, and he's very logical, and he's very deliberate, and all that they're very admirable qualities. He's a lot of things I will never be, but at the end of the day, Ted Cruz, when he starts talking, it sounds a little slimy.
Well, that's because at the end of the day, Ted Cruz is slimy, and I
don't know if that's true. I mean, he's a politician.
Okay, look, I mean, I'm taking the side that most of your professional politicians, and Donald Trump is not a professional politician.
That's true.
Most of your professional politicians are slimy, regardless of whether Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians or Independents. They're pretty slimy people.
You're right.
And at the end of the day, Ted Cruz would cut a deal with the Democrats to meet the status quo, where Donald Trump would go on Twitter and say, fuck you. Not in those words, but basically he'll go to Twitter and go, fuck you guys.
That's why Jeb Bush, that's the same argument why Jeb Bush, the established like, oh, it's Jeb Bush's turn. And everybody's like, no, it's not. I mean, like, can you imagine like all the stuff that's going on now, Jeb Bush being president? It'd be worse than having Hillary as president, because here's the thing, Jeb Bush, at least, I mean, there wouldn't even be there would be no argument against any of this. It'd be like, well, at least with Hillary, if she was president, there'd be people on the other side saying how crazy this is. Jeb Bush would shut all that stuff down, and it would be like, well, we got to have a heart, and we got to, all this kind of crap. And so anyway, enough politics on the 100th episode. So, hey, real quick.
Yeah.
I sent you a link to something the other night, and I didn't know Ruger made these.
What's that?
It's a 10 millimeter 1911.
Oh, man, I tell you what. Well, I'm a fan of the 10 millimeter.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of wanted a 10 millimeter 1911.
Yeah,
but I don't want a Colt Delta Elite. I don't want to pay that kind of money.
No, I tell you what, I've been looking at Dan Wesson 10 millimeters for a long, long time, and I like them. But here's my problem with 10 millimeter, and this is not shitting on 10 millimeter at all. I like 10 millimeter. I would love to hunt with a 10 millimeter 1911. I really would. But
really?
Oh yeah, man, it'd be fun. I'd love to bag a couple coyotes with it.
Coyotes? You're going to get that close to a coyote with a... Okay.
Dude, I have coyotes run underneath my deer stand when I'm hunting. It's not that big of a deal. But look, I really can't justify shooting a 10 millimeter, supporting the ammo just for having a 10 millimeter. I mean, it is what it is. I've got about 100 rounds of 10 millimeter brass. I could reload 10 millimeter and play with it that way. But I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things. It's like a gun that I would shoot maybe every couple of years. I've never justify the price of buying a 10 millimeter because although I'd like to hunt with one, it's like, at the end of the day, I never really justify spending the money to buy one. But I'll tell you what, I like that Ruger 10 millimeter.
What was it, $5.99 or something?
I know, it was reasonable as hell. Yeah, it was like $600.
Yeah,
and look,
a range toy.
Oh, sure it would. And look, I mean, you're talking a 1911, $600, dude. That's short money all day long for a 1911.
Yeah. Now, you know what? I don't want to get it twisted because there's going to be someone out there that's going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, I wouldn't stake my life on, a Ruger 10 millimeter. I wouldn't stake my life. The truth is, I don't care who makes it. I don't care if it's Ed Brown, Les Bear, Springfield Custom Shop, Jason Burton. The end of the day, if I had to run a 10 millimeter, the stake of my life on it, whether it's against two-legged animals, it's going to be a Glock Model 20.
No, I disagree with you on that. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with the Glock Model 20. Don't get me wrong. But Ruger makes a fine weapon. They make fine 1911s. They make fine revolvers. They're not high end. They're not fancy. They're run of the mill, everyday, average Joe kind of guns. But they make a quality gun, and Rugers generally don't break. But it's a 19.
Yeah, that's a Ruger Red Hawk that doesn't break, not a 1911.
Well, but 1911 is a 1911, and you know how that is. I mean, you're going.
Yeah, the thing is, if you take a 10 millimeter 1911 and you're trying to run that gun in rotation, or you're trying to run that gun as much as you and I run guns, that gun's going to break. I don't care who makes it. You're going to break a lug.
Look,
you're going to break.
My Colt breaks.
Something.
My SIG breaks. Your Ed Brown's break. 1911s break. It's the nature of 100-plus-year-old design, and when you run them hard, they break. But
1911 10 millimeters are going to break.
It doesn't matter. If it breaks, I fix it.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's not like you're going to get.
I'd rather run a Ruger 10 millimeter 1911 than a Glock 20 every day.
So you and I, we're going to have to. If we had more time in life, I'd tell you what, I'd stand up against you on that all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. I mean, if we had nothing else to do, we'd get 2 piles of 10 millimeter, and you take your Ruger 10 mil, you take any 1911 10 millimeter, and I take a Glock 20 10 millimeter, a full size Glock 20, and we run them like you're running IndyCar, and that 1911 is going to come into the pits a lot more than that Glock is.
You know what? I would bet. I mean, I'm not saying that the 1911 won't come into the pits more than the Glock 20, but I would bet you're wrong on that. I don't think it would come in as much as you would think it would.
Maybe. I would be surprised if it doesn't come in as much as I think. Because I think at some point what would happen is, you might have an out of battery, I don't know. You could have something on the Glock obviously break, but I think on the 10 millimeter 1911s, you're going to have a semi-catastrophic failure. You're going to have a crack in the lugs, or you're going to have a crack in the frame.
No way.
Right at the window, you're going to crack right there, and either by the dust cover or in the window. Oh yeah. We got so many other projects on the board. I'd be almost willing to bet you $100. I'll buy the Ruger 1911 and you buy a Glock 20, and we'll run it side by side, the same round count through them until one of them breaks. If we had the extra time to do it, I'd be willing to bet you. And you know me, I don't gamble and I don't normally bet, but I'd be willing to throw money on that. I think you're wrong. Oh, okay.
I think you're absolutely wrong.
Okay. You know what? If we get somebody to sponsor the ammo on that one, this brought to you by, insertammocompany.com, because that's going to be the thing. It's not even buying the ammo, it's finding the ammo.
Yeah.
So, all right. Hey, let's switch gears here, because here's the thing. We have a lot going on, and I have to go in for like some surgery here in like 35 minutes. So, we got a lot to do today. So, let me tell you what's going on with the range.
Yeah.
So, we are, and some of this may be oblique for the listener. We're going to leave, the spine and 3 fingers. Okay.
Yeah.
The first finger is low enough. We're going to leave that in place.
Okay.
The second finger, we've knocked about 7 feet off the top of it.
Okay.
Not completely flat, but a trench through it about, let's see, 3 bolt. Let's see. So 28, 38, 40, about 42 feet wide.
Okay.
And then we're able to put eyes on the face of the third finger, and that might get us to 600 yards. I'm going to have to finagle that a little bit. We haven't put an impact zone in there at the 600. But there is a trail that we've cut that goes right by it. So we have to make a decision whether I'm getting some pushback from the dozer people. And here's what it is. I am tempted to knock down the entire second finger and make that a bowl. And I don't know if there's enough dirt to do it, but there'd be some drainage issues. But when I have proposed that, not ordered it, but proposed it, the bulldozer people are like, hey, are you sure you want to move that much dirt?
Yeah.
So, because here's the thing, from the shooting position through the trench in the second finger, you can only get eyes probably about halfway up in the third finger. So you're not even putting bullets at the bottom of the third finger, which I would rather have bullets lower and have it almost be like a rock quarry. So, it's like a huge hill that's a giant backstop, and we can put targets all in the side of it coming back towards the shooting position. And then maybe I put a trench through the third finger, and that pushes us out to, the 7, 8, 9,000, or, we may only get 9. I mean, I have to see how I can kind of finagle it. But that's kind of the thinking, but I'm getting some blowback on that. And also, I guess I got to tell you this too. I'm getting warnings that we're going to be contacted by the government. There's some suspicions that we've moving so much dirt that somebody's going to show up and potentially shut us down.
Yeah, well, it's zoning and permits and shit like that. So,
it's not local. It's going to be state. It's not local. It's going to be state. So I told the dozer people, I said, I know how government works, and it's 4th of July holiday week, and the first we will hear of anything won't be till next Monday or Tuesday. I said, we won't hear shit this week. So I said, maybe we should go ahead and knock this finger down before we get told to stop.
Stop, yeah.
We can start it back up. We'll figure it out. But, I expect we're going to get some, we may get a visit or a notice. We're moving enough dirt.
And at the end of the day, that doesn't shock me.
Yeah. It's a lot. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now. What the hell else was there? Oh, this is good news so far. And, the dozer people are surprised. We have not hit any rock yet. So they haven't had to use the ripper.
That's amazing, because that part of the state has a lot of limestone in it, man.
That's what he said. And he said he thinks,
like, if you go literally several miles down the road to where like Mitchell Range is, dude, all those hillsides are nothing but limestone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, and it's amazing that they're not hitting any rock.
We haven't hit any rock yet.
That's crazy. I mean, it's good, but it's crazy.
Yeah, so it's all clay. And so that's interesting. So I'll have to make some decisions and probably make them probably today. So, here's what's going on. So you're busy as hell.
Yeah.
We've got the construction going on the range. I'm having like major dental issues from years of getting punched in the face. I got to go in and deal with a bunch of stuff. And then it's a holiday week. It's just been so crazy busy. That's why we haven't even been able to do a podcast for like weeks. So, so we'll have to talk about it. We may have to talk about it off pod. We may even have to talk about it this week. I may have to call you on like over the internet or something and figure that out a little bit. Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So I don't know. You haven't seen it. You haven't seen any of the work. So.
Well,
are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about it. We'll do that off pod, but I may take a run down there in a day or two just to kind of see where everything's at.
Okay. There is no shooting.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Because it'll be when you get there, it'll be obvious. You'll be like, holy shit, we can't shoot. I mean, it's, check this out. From the driveway, the turnoff at the road.
Yeah.
You can see the outside face of the third finger.
Ooh. Ouch.
Yeah. So we're going to have to cover, like, once we get all this done, we're going to have to close a lot of that up and recover a lot of stuff. What happened is the farmer came in, took a bunch of hay, and we've been doing a lot of cutting, and that's really opened it up so people can see what's going on. And, we're starting to get some inquiries on it. So, that's why the dozer people are like, I would expect we may get to the point that we may get a notice. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
I mean,
and I was like, there's no zoning here. He's like, not. He said, it's the state. Well, and it's fine. I've got some stuff in my back pocket to fight that as well. So we're not going to get into a fight, but it'll be fine.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the DP-51 video?
I'm not 100%. I've never played with one. And it reminds me a lot of the Hungarian high power copy I have. That's exactly what it reminds me of when I see it. And
it's possible. To me, it looks like a Smith & Wesson, but I can see that because the Hungarian high power kind of, the FEG looks like that too.
The Hungarian high power copy I have is basically a bastard rendition of a high power and a Smith & Wesson. Some of them were direct high power copies. The one I have is kind of like the looks of a high power with the internals of the Smith & Wesson. I mean, and I don't know. I really don't have an opinion on it one way or the other. I think I really just kind of need to run it.
Yeah, it's it's not a viable modern gun, but it has some surprises. Do you remember, I don't remember who did this. There was a product you could buy for 1911s because there used to be this big argument that a 1911 cocked and locked was bad, or it was perceived as bad by the public. So somebody come out with a conversion. You take a 1911, you cock and lock it, you chamber it, and it's locked. And then you can push the hammer forward. It's still cocked. And so I think when you would knock off the safety, the hammer would fall back. This DP-51 has something very similar to that built into it factory. And how it came up was I'm at the dealer and I'm kind of fingering it and, you know, looking at it. And I noticed there was this weird, like, sear break halfway through the trigger pull that was not dropping the hammer. And I'm like, I'm working it. And I'm like, why is that? What's that click in there? And I'm like, this is something weird. This is something. And all of a sudden the dealer, he's like, oh, let me show you something. And he did that in front of me. And I'm like, holy cow, that's interesting. So I was like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll be taking that. So
yeah.
That's what it is. Well, you know, I the thing is, surprisingly, I think I can shoot that gun like a 1911. I don't think I could shoot it much. I think the trigger guard, the underside of the trigger guard for like my middle finger, it's, if you think you get bad Glock knuckle shooting some of these guns, this gun's got a real hard spot. It's got a real sharp point under there. And I think maybe, I don't know, probably within like 4 or 5 magazines, I would probably be cutting me. So, you know, once we get the range up, maybe we'll get a plate rack, and I'd be interested to shoot this gun on a plate rack and see how fast I can run it.
Actually, so would I. I mean, it's it's one of those guns that it piques my interest enough to where I'd want to run it. I mean, there's a lot of handguns out there. It's like, yeah, it's cool. You want to run it? Yeah, I'll shoot a magazine or two out of it. Whatever, because, you know, just because. But it doesn't interest me. This is actually an interesting gun. I'd like to run it for a little bit.
Yeah, it's just so unique. You know, it's a good reference gun for the collection, just to show how that, you know, kind of some of the, I mean, I'm being a little harsh. You know, you look, you know, we live in an age of striker guns and Browning locked, you know, actions. And, you know, back in the day, people were trying, hadn't been to the promised land of striker guns yet. So they were always trying to come up with ways to make these hammer-fired guns more shootable. And this was at a time when this was one of the little tricks that people would come up with. And I think a lot of people today have never seen it before. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So,
yeah. I think it's a real interesting gun. Like I said, I wouldn't mind.
Well, I mean, you know, look, it was short money. It's not like we're going to spend $500,000 on the Han Solo Star Wars pistol.
Yeah, no shit.
So when I saw that, we were talking about it, and I was like, what did you trade your Broom-handle Mauser for again back in the day?
Oh my God. So back years and years ago, a bunch of Broom-handles came in from China, and they were all 30 Mauser, you know, and they, you know, some of them were in great condition. Some of them were pretty rough, you know, finish-wise and barrel-wise. And I bought a broom-handled Mauser and it had a broken firing pin, mind you. But I bought it for $75. Now, I know there's people listening to this going, holy shit. But it was a Chinese import. It had a broken firing pin. I bought a firing pin from Numerich Arms, Gun Parts Corporation, whatever they're going by these days, for like, I don't know, 20 or 25 bucks. So I had like $100 in this gun. And I didn't really know a whole lot about broom handles, but even back then, the gun was worth a bit more than $100. Nothing like what they're bringing today, though. And I had a guy I knew worked in a gun store, and he's like, I've got a Fin M39. And back then, I was big into the Russian Fin thing. And he's like, I've got an M39. I'll trade you straight up for it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Because I didn't have any interest in the broom handle. I got it because it was on the cheap. And man, I think he ended up, I mean, the M39 at the time was going for, I don't know, $200-300. And this is when you can buy like a Mauser 9130 for like, you know, $49-59. You know, so it was a higher end gun at the time. But he turned around and like flipped the Mauser for like $400-500, you know, and it was like,
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, and that was a valuable lesson because it's like, man, I don't want to say he fucked me. I fucked myself. He threw an offer my way and I accepted it,
So let me go ahead and say this for the layman. Freeze traded a broom-handle Mauser for a Mosin rifle.
Yes. Now
that's ultimately how history will write that story.
Yeah. And yeah. Oh man. And today, M39s are, they're what? I don't know, $500-600, $700, but broom-handled Mausers are like $1,500-1,600.
Oh, they could be more, depending.
Could be,
So every time a Han Solo's pistol comes up, I always bring it up so Freeze can relive his broom-handle M39 trade.
By the way, that M39 is the same M39 you cracked the stock on when you were shooting.
I see. Even when you lose, I still have to lose more.
Well, actually, that's a project gun right now. Because what I did is I took the action out of it and I bought a custom stock, a custom it's a nice stock. I've got to fit the action to the stock, and it's just one of those projects I need to finish. But I bought it's a tactical stock, made laminate wood. It's a beautiful stock. Took me, God, I don't know if you remember when I ordered it, but it took me like 6 months to get it.
Oh yeah. That was from the one guy
Yeah.
Oh my God, that guy took forever.
Yeah. I mean, it's got an adjustable cheek piece. It's got pillar
bedding in it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a great stock, and it's really a project I need to get going on. And I even actually bought an M24 rail that'll go on it that doesn't take any permanent drilling, tapping, or modifications for it. So, I mean, I can put this in this stock and put a honking scope on it, I mean, it's really kind of an interesting project. And that M39 is a freaking tack driver. That's a damn nice gun. It's a great shooter. So that's why
it was a real accurate gun. That's why we wanted to use it for Coyote. That's why I cracked it, because I was shooting it to zero it for Coyote.
Well,
and it cracked in my hand.
Yeah, well, and that's honestly, I mean, I bust your balls on it over cracking it because you were shooting it. But the truth is, the last time I pulled it apart, cleaned it, and put it back together, I didn't torque the screws down tight enough. I mean, it was actually my fault. But
I appreciate you saying that.
But I'm still going to bust your hump over it because you're the one that pulled the trigger when it cracked. So,
man. That's the second gun I've actually had a gun crack in my hand while I was shooting it, and it always kind of, because you can feel it, like you notice it, like that moment where you're like, whoa,
yeah.
Hey, do you have any? There's a story that broke this morning, and I haven't had time to deal with it but there's. The FBI supposedly is broken up a 4th of July terror plot in Cleveland. Have you any idea what that is?
I have not heard thing one about it.
You think it's going to be Amish, or you think it's going to be somebody else?
No, I don't know. I have not. It's probably the Amish because, they're vicious.
Yeah.
What does Wyatt call them?
What does who call them?
What does Wyatt call the Amish?
Don't even say no. Don't make me edit that shit out on the podcast.
Okay.
We know a lot of people. You and I know a lot of people. It's interesting. I was always shocked by this. And, as you go out into the rural areas, you and I know a lot of people that have interfaced with Amish and Mennonite communities their whole lives, and they hate them.
Oh, yeah. Man,
They think they are the most thieving, lying group of people. And it's weird because these people that we know are 150 miles apart.
Oh, yeah. Maybe more than that. But
and it's weird.
Let me tell you something. I've got a cousin who told me a story, and I'm not going to go into the story. But he was dealing with a Mennonite farmer. And like I said, I'm not going to go into the story, but he contacted my cousin and said, "Hey, I'm having trouble with my hot water heater. Can you help me out?" And he's like, "Sure, I got one in the barn. I'll bring one down." Now think about this. He's having trouble with his hot water heater. That, my friend, requires electricity.
Yeah.
He was illegally hooked into the main power line.
Yeah.
It's like, so
we had a guy out near where the new range is. He is offered, and I was just polite and thanked him, but I haven't given him an answer. He's like, if you need any barns or structures built, I've got teams of Amish people to build stuff for you.
Well,
and part of me's like, well, we'll see.
Well, I'll tell you what, the clubhouse at Mitchell Range was built by the Amish.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually the place I used to work. Half of them, most of their buildings were built by Amish people.
Yeah, that's actually not in that area. That's not uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, hey, do you think Harley Davidson's gonna get any backlash for trying to move production out of the U.S.?
Not really.
Have you heard? Yeah, Harley Davidson's they've been in such trouble because of Indian anyway, and the poor motorcycle market. It's like, Harley Davidson's been closing plants as it is for a couple years.
Look, this is going to hurt the souls of a lot of guys. And look, I'm a guy that rode Harleys for years. But Harley is assembled in the United States. Man, most of their parts are outsourced to other countries anyway.
Are they?
Oh, yeah. Hell, the chrome's done in Canada because you can't chrome here in the United States with the new EPA laws. The U.S. chrome sucks. Really?
Yeah. You know what? I think I've heard that in reference to the firearms industry, because there's a lot of those finishes that they generally don't do in the U.S. anymore.
Yeah, because the EPA laws, you can't. The chrome that you get that's done here in the United States is crappy. So all your good chrome is done either in Canada or Mexico because they don't have the EPA laws, and they can still pollute the environment with the toxic chemicals it takes to do a good chrome job.
Interesting.
Most of the parts, hell, Harleys, Canada, Mexico, India. I think some of the parts are made in like South Korea. Half their parts are outsourced and they're just brought in and assembled here in the U.S. So look, and I know that's going to piss off a lot of Harley guys, but you know what? If you think I'm bullshitting you, look it up. It's not hard to find. It's a Google search away.
Well, there's two other issues Harley has had, and one of them is not their fault and one of them is. The first one is that the motorcycle riding market in the U.S. is declining. The motorcycle industry has admitted that they're having a hard time getting new riders to come into the market, and generally the new younger riders are all buying like the Hayabusas that we featured on our they're buying crotch rockets, which, and again, I started with a crotch rocket, and, those people, as you get older, you tend to migrate to bigger, heavier, more comfortable bikes. So that may not be the end all be all. But the second thing, and this is going to really hurt a lot of the Harley people, and you and I know this because we know the truth. The Harley Davidson brand has been so infected and I use that word deliberately, infected by the outlaw doper biker gang reputation, that there's a lot of people that don't even want to dick with that anymore. That's why you've seen a big push that's why Indian's been so successful, because, you've even had like these crazy bullshit stories about some of these gangs would, if you're not riding a Harley, they're going to do shit to you, or you can't show up here on that. And, or just different, all these different horseshit things where it's because the Harley brand has become so stereotypically, viewed as a certain way that a lot of people just, they don't want to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got a friend of mine. He's a shooter. He's an older guy, and he's been a Harley guy all his life. And he just bought, less than a year ago, he's been riding Harleys for 40 years plus. He just bought an Indian, and he was telling me, because I'm like, wow, that's a pretty drastic change, being a dyed-in-the-wool Harley rider for years. He was telling me certain things about the Indian over the Harley, and I'm not going to get into specifics because we don't have the time today to do it.
Yeah.
But, basically, hands down, as far as the engine components, warranty, just Indian's basically kicking Harley's ass because Indian wants customers and they're willing to do what it takes to get them.
Oh, it's even more than that, because isn't Indian owned by Polaris? Do I have that right? I could be wrong.
You know what? I don't know if that's right or not. I'm not. It very well.
Okay, who owns Victory? Remember Victory?
Victory's Polaris. I think.
Okay, well, check this out. I'm pretty certain that the Victory, like, you'd always see an Indian dealer and a Victory dealer kind of together. And what happened was, it was last year or the year before, you saw a fair amount of these dealerships close, because what happened was they were selling so many Indians versus Victories that the powers that be, I think at Polaris, decided they're still supporting the Victory brand, but they've decided to put their money on the winning horse, and they've rolled it all into Indian. They're all Indian all the way, and they're because they're like, this brand is really working. And so you'll notice you don't really see Victory dealerships anymore.
Yeah.
If you want to take your Victory in for service, you got to go to an Indian dealer.
I just looked it up. In 2011, Polaris Industries purchased Indian motorcycles. So they are.
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so some of this, like, the media is pushing all this bullshit about Harley Davidson. It's like, yeah, okay. I understand that, but it's not the whole story.
And look, the truth is, I'm not shitting on Harley Davidson at all. I like Harleys. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shitting on them, but I don't think moving their manufacturing out of the country is going to hurt them that much. At the end of the day, I don't think moving their manufacturing is going to put them out of business. Indian may put them out, but moving their manufacturing facility won't.
Yeah, they were going to do it anyway. Hey, have you? I want to change subjects here because, again, we are really pressing. I gotta be in like 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Have you talked to your dad about the Supreme Court union ruling?
No, I have not, and I kind of avoided the subject with them. But
Freeze's dad was a lifelong UAW member.
Oh, absolutely. And let me put it to you this way: being a lifelong UAW member, still a UAW member. He's retired, but once a union guy, always a union guy. Still goes, not very often, but still goes to union meetings here and there. But he gets a magazine in the mail called Solidarity, and my dad's a diehard UAW member, but he never really understood why union members voted Democrat because he's a diehard Republican as well. But anyway, what's interesting is he gets this magazine every month called Solidarity. It's a UAW publication, and as a member, you get it. I'm sure there's probably guys listening to this podcast that get it. But I was talking to my mom, and this is a couple of years ago, and she was saying, who's also a diehard Republican, she was saying, you know, I used to read the Solidarity magazine he gets. She's like, but it's so filled with socialist, communist bullshit. It physically makes me sick to even open the cover and read it. Think about that.
You know, and see, that's the interesting thing about this, because what's happened is, look, maybe there's people that they're relatively new to the podcast. You know, you and I are not the biggest fans of unions, but we can also say that the union was very good to your father, and it was very good to a lot of people that, you know, he worked with at his time. But what's happened is you get guys like Richard Trumka, I think it's his name, and all these high-level dudes that run these unions, they're all communists. And so what ends up happening is these unions end up becoming co-opted. And, you know, unions were created to keep people from having little kids working in coal mines and shit. But then what ends up happening is the high-dollar members end up becoming card-carrying communists, and all of the, all the people, the worker bees, you know, they all support, you know, conservative values and, you know, the Constitution in America, but the higher ups are giving all the money to the Democrats. And there's never been any way for the union member to vote with his dollars. Like, so what this should do is this should bring, you know, ideally should bring the union leadership down to a more, you know, membership level, and concentrate on issues that actually affect their members. Like, you know, like also, you know, like you're a union leader in some area and you're dealing with union issues within certain factories or maybe within your state, but you're not doing money pumps to try to undermine capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is a good thing.
But it is a good thing because it also goes deeper than that. Like, for example, if you're a member of, I forget what the nursing union is called, whatever. Okay, like, and I know this from personal experience. Okay, so you're a nurse working in a hospital that's unionized, and not all of them are. As a new hire, you go in there as a new hire, and they're like, okay, here's your paperwork to join the union. And the dues are X amount of dollars a month. And you go, well, I don't want to join the union because I don't believe in them. And they're like, that's fine. You don't have to join the union, but you still will pay union dues.
Mm-hmm.
So they go, well, shit, if I got to pay the union dues anyway to be employed, because the option of not paying union dues is not there. You do have the option of not joining the union, but you're still going to pay the dues. So everybody joins the union because you have to pay the dues. And that's not bullshit. That's a real life experience. And I know this from personal experience.
Well, that's why that's the case. That's what the Supreme Court is deciding. All the unions are like that.
Exactly. So if you don't want to join the union, you shouldn't be forced to join the union.
But here's the thing. What this also enables people to do. So let's say Richard Trumka comes out and he decides, you know, I don't think anybody should have a magazine and a gun over 10 rounds. He's out dealing in political shit that has nothing to do with unions. He goes out and does something or says something or supports something that's like, that's the problem with these unions, is they go way off the reservation. Well, here's the thing. Now Richard Trumka can get a phone call. Hey, Dickface, 30% of our union members in Detroit just turned in their fucking union cards. Maybe you better walk this one back. And that's how this gives the union members the ability to vote on the actions, individual micro actions of their members, of their leadership. Because what's happened is it's such a big collective block that it's all communist and no one can do anything. You like your job? well, I guess you're going to join a union. You don't like what they have to say? Fuck you. You like your job?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, I was just curious if this, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised that your dad didn't, you haven't, you know, he didn't bring it up. So.
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness, though, I've been working this week and I haven't really talked to him any, but it's kind of one of those, I guarantee you, he doesn't like the ruling because he does believe in solidarity, you know, and
sure.
And, you know,
he reads the headline and he reads unions are weak and that hurts his soul.
Yeah. Well, okay. Like, I remember when UPS went on strike, I don't know, what, 10 years ago, maybe? It's been a while.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. There was an instance where one of the UPS union members, I don't know, ran over, I don't know, killed someone.
Really?
Yeah. And, you know, and he went to jail for it. And I don't know if they beat someone crossing a picket line or some shit like that. Anyway, and the quote from my dad was, he's like, you know, he's going to pay for that and he'll go to prison. He's like, but that makes the union stronger. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, you know, he's like, sometimes when you're on a strike, he's like, sometimes you need to kill someone to get your point across. And I'm like, wow, you know, that's harsh.
Yeah.
But you're also talking to a guy who in, I don't know, 70 or 71 walked the picket line for 7 months.
Yeah. It was a different time.
You know, it was a different time, you know.
The Democratic Party wasn't the American Socialist Communist Party.
Exactly. And that's exactly true. I mean, the thing is, I'm not.
If you had gone to a bunch of UAW union members in 1971 on the picket line, and you said, "I'm a member of the American Socialist Party, and we need to organize for the proletariat against the man," they would have probably killed you.
They might have. Yeah.
Yeah, they may have actually beat you to death. Because better dead than red.
Most union members were very, very patriotic. And look, and union members today are still very patriotic. It's just a damn shame that, you know, the teachers union in the state of California marches in the fucking May Day parade every year. And they don't even try to hide the fact that they're communist. They openly That's the teachers union in California. They openly admit that they're communist and they march in the May Day parade. Look it up.
The senior leadership of most of these unions are communist. All right, well, we got to wrap this one up because I got to get in. They got to start working on me. So
yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, this wraps up episode 100 of the John 1911 podcast. We'll promise to get these out in a more timely manner once we get through this week and some of the range construction. If you want to see more about what we've discussed on this podcast or updates on the projects we have going on, please go to our website, John1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.
See you later.